The main way that you get into the statue is by solving two different puzzles which unlock two pressure plates, and then you move statues onto the pressure plates, and that unlocks the statue. So starting at note 1, you go through the main door. You start on like a beach area, and there's some collectibles nearby. You go in, when you first come in, you'll either see that straight ahead of you is the giant statue, or you'll see off to the left there's a series of torches kind of leading you to the first doorway that is marked by note 3. Once you get into this room, this is the first puzzle. Basically, the way my puzzle works is that there is a correct path to follow in the room, which is marked by the player path. If you go off of this path, there are tiles on the whole floor is tile, like stone tiles that you would see in like a temple kind of thing. If you go off of the path, those tiles actually depress and activate a trigger, and the turret will start to shoot you. So the idea is you want to stay on this path. The way that you know you're on the right path is that the tiles aren't depressing while you walk. So you follow that path around, you pick up the collectibles as you go, which are the blue pieces. Once you pick up all the pieces on the way there, there's a button in the center of the room marked by Objective 1 that you press, and then it opens the door to the hallway. The areas in this room that are marked by just the empty circles are actually areas where the piece is hidden underneath a tile that you'll have to pick up with the gravagnol. And the way that you'll know that there's an area that you should kind of search around is when you hit one of these blocks, a little, like a tone will play. That was kind of the only way I could think of signaling that you should look around. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but right by the main entrance, you'll see to the whole temple. There's a crate and money and a music sign next to it. When you loot that crate, the same tone that's going to play in these puzzle rooms plays to give the player an idea of if they hear that sound, they should be looking around for something. So you finish this little puzzle in the first puzzle room, you pick up all the collectibles, you press the button, you enter into the hallway. That's when you'll hit your first checkpoint. So you don't have to redo the puzzle again if you do die. Then you'll go into the next room, which is marked by note 5. This puzzle follows the same general idea, it's just more difficult. So there's, again, a turret in the room. If you move off the correct path, you'll get shot by the turret. There's health packs you can pick up, and then you have to pick up all of the pieces on the way to the button that you have to press, which in this room is marked by Objective 2. One of the additional challenges in this room is that there is a crate that you have to pick up along the path, and the button is completely surrounded by water, so you have to use the gravagnol to move the crate so that you can use it as a platform to get out of the water and press the button. So once you press that button, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this in the other room. When you press either of the buttons, not only does the door unlock, but it is what makes the pressure plates around the statue pressable. Before you press the buttons, they are surrounded by fire, so there's no way for you to just go in and activate the pressure plates and get into the statue. So pressing that button is going to lower the fire and open the door. So now that you've pressed the second button, the pressure plates are going to be activatable, but what you can do before then is if you've picked up all the cash that's kind of scattered throughout these rooms, a secret door will be unlocked, which is marked by note number 8. And it's not, you don't have to do this, it's just an additional objective, but if you do end up going in there, then there's extra cash for you to pick up. If you don't do that, then the next thing you're going to be doing is coming down to note 6. And you're going to be trying to move two different statues marked by a symbol that is also on the pressure plate, so you have to be moving the correct statue onto the correct pressure plate. So you'll see that I have the first statue is marked by Objective 3, and the correct pressure plate is marked by Objective 3, and then vice versa for statue 4. Once you move those statues into the correct places, the door for the main objective statue will unlock, and you can go in, pick up the relic, which is marked by Objective 5, and the level is over. I did put the option for there would be a downward set of stairs behind the relic, and then a door there, and you would follow that door outside of a path, which is how it could lead to another player area. And that's the level.
Okay. So overall, I think the design of your area is moving in the right direction. The layout is something that you may want to make adjustments to. Try out a few different layouts and see what you like. Um, First thing I noticed down here is it looks like down here the player's starting in some type of outside area and they're going into the
Hmm.
tunnel. All right, so rather than think about just a small little strip, like maybe this is where the player can actually walk, try and think about creating an actual world that's going to be all encompassing for the player, right? Don't just create this small little bar here and then you have to fully detail out everything. Try and fully plan out and design everything you're going to be building, and then within that, you're going to start to hone down and refine where the actual play space is and where the player is limited, where they're allowed to go. Because otherwise, you're going to run into a problem like, you build this out and now the player looks, south or looks, down this way on the map and they just see, nothingness, or they just see the edge of the world. So you may have an idea in your head, but just do your best to communicate all of that information onto your actual map. Your overall concept for your level, I really like how you have all these smaller little setups that lead to the major ones, and the major ones lead directly into the goal. So definitely good tie in there. The one thing I would like to see more is maybe you want to play with the size of these rooms. They feel fairly simple in terms of the player can just come in here and if you haven't messed with the turret already, I suggest you open up the danger zone scene. There's one that's in like the second floor, and the danger zone you can actually mess with it, and then you can just go ahead and place one in there and get a feel for how it shoots and how it takes damage, or how the player takes damage, because how the turret is right now, it's pretty much like a ping pong ball shooter, so it's not the most high tech and optimized system. It's just more of a small hazard. So doing it in a way where the player walks off this path and they get shot by the turret, that sounds good, but it would have to be a highly modified version of the turret we currently have. So you want to make sure you're planning for something that's within the realm of what we have, and also you having this pathway here. If the player gets off of this path and they get shot by the turret, how are they going to know that they need to get back on the correct path? So maybe you want to rethink how exactly you're doing this system. But I like the fact that you get to this objective and something happens. So you can rework this a little bit. Maybe you want to make this room a slightly larger. And if you haven't brought this into Unity already, I definitely recommend doing so. That might alleviate some of those issues that you're seeing. And also maybe those tiles that you were talking about, it's probably a good idea to put those in the map itself so you get a really good visual of how big they are, how many there are in the room, which ones are the good ones, maybe some are booby traps. So it'll give you a much better sense of the detail that you're going to put into this. So as far as this hallway goes here, and just when you described it, you very clearly had stated, the player, leaves this room, they go through the hallway, and now they're in the next room. And then you just started talking a lot about this other objective room here. But you left out all of this, and this is an opportunity for some play space, for some type of setups, minor setups sprinkled throughout the level are going to make it much more immersive and an interactive experience. So take a look at any other small little obstacles or setups or things you can do. Maybe you want to put a collectible too in here, but don't just think of this as just a transition from one space to another. Really fully detail this out and put some more interactions and setups in there to make it an interesting playthrough. It also seems like, using the pressure plates, it's going to be like once you have the system working and designed, it's just about a matter of what you do with it. So you may want to consider like including one more room on here. Just a matter of, you got this pressure plate system working. It's just a matter of how you want to use it. Or maybe just make one of these rooms slightly larger. And I also do like your suggestion there, or your idea of maybe having somewhere over here. This is where the actual ending is and would connect to another student's area. So maybe you want to move your player finish to over here, and maybe when they turn this is a statue you said, right? In the middle?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so maybe when they get everything set up, the statue like rotates or moves into place, and now there's some, big great doors or some type of gear that turns and opens up some type of passageway over here that could lead into the next area. So I definitely
Okay.
see some good things going on here, but you definitely want to include a lot of detail in your map, as much as you can, to really get a full experience. So any other designer or developer or any other team member could look at this and very clearly build it in a way that you want it to. So definitely your mechanics are important as well, but then also start to think about all the visuals and all the other pieces you're going to need to actually bring this world to life.
Okay. One of the problems I was having with like I wanted to actually put the tiles in here, but I wasn't sure of a way to do it that it didn't just make the map look more cluttered.
Okay, if you want to, maybe you want to think about like, copying this space here, like this is the size of your room, and then maybe off to the side. You could put your tile layout off over just to get a better understanding for yourself and also for anyone else that's reading the map. Maybe you just have a small note that's explaining the tiles. So maybe one of your notes over here, like this one, where they're talking about the tiles, you could have a small little legend of the red tile means this one, the blue ones mean this one, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. And the other thing I was kind of wondering is because this is a relatively short level, I mean, they have to finish it within 4 minutes. I was kind of concerned about adding anything else to it, like as far as objectives or stuff you can interact with, because I was worried it might start to take it over that 4 minute mark.
No, I think you're
Um,
I think you're pretty close to the 2 minute mark, maybe even like 2.5 minutes.
okay.
And remember,
Okay.
that's like the ideal playthrough, like a player that's going for their objectives and running through everything. It's not for the ones that's collecting everything and doing every interaction. So I think you have the room for
Okay.
it. What was that?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, okay.
Yeah, I think you
For
have
some
the
reason
I
it's
mean,
echoing
you
now.
have the space to maybe make this room a bit larger this way, maybe make this one larger to the right, and really make each one of these
Hmm.
puzzle rooms feel like there's a lot going on, right? So if this puzzle is all about, you said I think it was getting this box over to the water, right?
Hmm.
So maybe getting this
Yeah.
box, you have to first do something else. Maybe you need to interact with something and disarm the turret. And now that you can do that, you can gain access to the box. So start to build upon, build everything up from this room, right? You're introducing this concept. Now you make it a little bit harder. Then maybe you have a third one where it's even more challenging than it was in the previous rooms.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or anything else you want to point out?
Um, I don't think so. That helped a lot, actually.
Awesome. That's what we're here for.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem. Alrighty, whenever you're ready, let's run me through it.
Okay, so the idea for this one is an outdoor area, sort of very much thematically drawing on Escape from LA for the visual. You'd start off down there at 1 with the player start next to the helipad. The creative vision had mentioned the helicopter. And from there you would basically be given an introduction to the area. You'd be put in front of a tall tower for the Calicorp. And you're trying to get inside basically is the main goal. To do that, you need to power up. The doors, needs power to open. So you would go through and try to activate the 3 different generators. So from 1, you'd go to 2. To get from 2 to 3, you'd have to cross an area that is guarded by turrets. So the puzzle there would be to activate the console to disable the force field on the pipe. That would release a sort of a toxic fluid that would short out the turrets, and then it would drain that hole down on the bottom. That would allow you to then cross without getting shot. From there, you would need to use a cybernetic arm. You could see sort of in the junk over the hill over at the area 5 from 3. There was a little cinematic that would show you once you go up to the door. It would sort of pan up and show you what you need. You would go around to 4. From 3, there would be a small puzzle to unlock the door. It's just basically you'd have to go through and it would give you a word and you would have to figure out that it is a anagram puzzle. So you have to take Coral Pick and figure out that you have to rearrange it to be Calicorp. That would unlock that door. You'd go in there. There's various collectibles in there, and you would find the arm that you need in order to use the cybernetic arm to activate the door at 3, as well as a part to repair the cable car that's at 9. So from there, you'd grab that, you'd go back out, you'd activate that generator. This was a point where for the instructor had said that it was somewhat confusing because it goes from 6 and then 7's all the way over there. It's like you have to go back to the beginning. The idea was that once you activated the generator, it would teleport the player back to the beginning instead of them having to go back through the level and backtrack. But when I have some plans to readjust it for submission tonight. Instead of having it to where you go back to the beginning, I wanted to make it so it's more of a linear path to where you go through there and then you get to the next area. But I suppose that's
Yeah, I definitely would stay away from teleporting the player and really try and design a thing that's a linear experience. But we can talk. I have a few suggestions, but we can talk about that more once you've gone through the whole thing.
So you'd go back, and the idea was that you'd go back, and it would start with a sort of, you'd see the top of the tower. So my featured asset is the top of the tower itself, which is the Calicorp logo. So you would see the logo, and each time you activated the generator, part of it would light up, and that's part of the code that you need in the final part to get to the door. It would be a color code, so you'd have to put it in the order of the lights. So you'd see that, and then it would pan down to the entrance, and you'd see your guy standing there. I like the idea of that, but I think it made it more confusing for the way the level works. So then you'd go from there, you'd go up. There is a spill. You'd basically need to destroy the pipe where the toxic fluid's coming out of it, blocking your way. And you would do that by first weakening the structure itself, and then using an explosive barrel to sort of just knock it out. Once you've completed that, you would cross over. There's 3 pressure plates. You have a series of crates and barrels stacked there on the platform with the pressure plates at 8, and you would need to basically figure out the correct weight ratio. So you need to put in 2 crates and 3 barrels across the 3 different pressure plates to disable the force field so you can activate the second generator. Again, you would get teleported back. You'd see the second light light up, so now you have blue, you have orange. It would pan down, you'd be back there at the beginning, at which point you would take the cable car, assuming you had found the part that you needed in area 6, or 5 rather. You take the cable car up. From there, when you get out of the cable car, there would be a camera. If the camera sees movement, it will activate the turret. And the way you would get around this is that you would use some of the just junk or torn up stone or whatever. I imagine it'd be a very ruined city sort of thing, to basically create either a wall or just something that you could carry with you when you would stop and let it drop, so that the camera wouldn't detect you behind it to get around it. That would lead you from 10 to 11. 11 would introduce a new item, which was the purifier, which was basically just something that would allow you to get to the toxic gas without dying. So it's introducing a new mechanic there. You would then use that, go through the gas, jump over, activate the last turret, which would put you back at the beginning with the red light. All the generators are powered, and you would go up to the door. The door is powered. You have to enter in a color code, which is, of course, the blue, orange, red, which would then allow you entrance into the tower.
Okay, and then that's where the level ends. So pretty much when you get in.
Yes.
Okay.
I sort of envision this as sort of like almost a tutorial sort of starter level. So a
Yeah.
few different types of puzzle types, but
Yeah.
it doesn't go in depth into any one specific puzzle type.
Yeah. When you're thinking long term, being being something that you want to put together with with your peers, this may be good for a final area, just because how you have your like where your ending position is. So just something to keep in mind that you want to try and make it as open as possible. And this just goes for everybody that you may have to make adjustments to this going forward. Like, if you end up being the middle area for some reason, you're going to have to find a way to have your objective be in a spot where the player can still transition. But that's something you can make adjustments to at a later date. Overall, I think you've definitely done a pretty good job. Just constructing the map and using the icons, using your own custom shapes. So just looking at the map, I get a real clear indication of the flow of the level and how things are going to go. Um, that being said, just looking at the player start, looks like there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different options I could go. Um, and some of it's objective based, but also I can just be wandering and roaming to some extent, right? Like right now, there's nothing stopping the player from just starting over here and just wandering up into this space, or even just starting over here and coming down
Right.
like along the beach or along the water and coming over here into this empty space. So you've definitely done a really good job of constructing the world that you want to create. Now try and limit where the player is able to go at certain points. I also think one big change that could definitely improve the flow of the level would be putting some type of barricade here or some type of way that the player can't get around this until they do something over here. So that's just going to make sure that they're hitting
Okay.
doing your generators in the order you want them to. And then also maybe this
Right.
item or something over here you get directly allows them to gain access to over here in this point.
Okay. I had originally, with my level design document, had it to where it was there were more generators for one, but I was worried about time, so I cut out a lot of stuff. But the idea was that you could pick sort of which way you wanted to go first. But given that I had to pare it down
Yeah.
and cut a lot of stuff, I understand what you're saying. I
It's not,
want to
and
go
that's
back
not a
through
bad thing.
and
I think,
make it
allowing
towards.
the player the choice to do it doesn't matter which one you do first is never a bad thing. Just think about that when you're actually designing. So maybe for example, this one, the player can't get up here until they do the first two. So it doesn't matter if you do this one first or this one second,
Right.
but you need them both to do this one. So um, that option of having them, it doesn't matter which one first is okay. I'm not saying that's not acceptable. You just want to really plan for that and make sure it's like, okay, well, if a player does this one, how's it going to affect down here and vice versa. Another thing, I like this little offshoot here that just has little collectibles. And are this some type of setup over here for these, or are they just kind of hanging out?
The toxic sludge was sort of intended just to do damage, so you'd have to sort of jump over. I guess I should have put a little jump thing maybe to demonstrate that, but
Yeah, and when you go through your final pass, definitely make sure yeah, just looking through your notes, just make sure you put a small little note about each collectible. So the reason that I ask everyone to do that,
okay.
just write a short little list, like 15 collectibles, one little sentence for each one. That way, it's just starting to make it very apparent to you guys, like when you're starting to just reuse the same one over and over again, like, oh, move rock out of the way, or, stack crate. You start to realize, like, wow, I have 6 of the same one. Maybe I could try something a little
Right.
different. So make sure you have a little note for each collectible. And then also just looking at the map in one way you could improve it, because one thing I do see with your map is you're going to get to the point, and this is probably why you were thinking about doing teleporting, is because you get to this point and I have to backtrack all the way. Well, here is
Right.
a really good opportunity for a way you can make an adjustment to that. So maybe the player starts over here and they can see this collectible, but they can't quite reach it through this way. but they try, maybe they jump in the sludge and take damage and respawn over here, and they give up, and they're like, okay, I can't get that. But then they come over here, they do their task, they get to this point, and maybe if you cut like a small little walkway through here, you could actually get here, and then now this is your way back to the generators, or the way back to the tower. So it's a something the player has seen. You're foreshadowing these collectibles, but then finally when they break through here, they're able to go back, so they're not backtracking. They're still progressing on a new path, but it's something that's laid out for them. So something to think about. Maybe you want to do something like that for this as well. And also, it's just the positioning, right? You start to just play with the positions of each one of these, right? So maybe this whole section right here, like all of this stuff. So just grab, like this large chunk of all this stuff. Maybe you move that to the right over here. You center your building a little bit more, and now maybe this little cable car is up to the north. Um, there's no right or wrong answer, right? But if you experiment with these and start to see how it's going to flow from one to another, you can try and eliminate some of that backtracking that you currently have. And then just try
Okay.
and make sure like little paths like this where you just have a stretch of the players just walking, include some type of setups in there, right? They don't have to be complex. They don't have to be super complicated, but you want something to keep the player interacting. So here, like you have this setup where you have like 3 pressure plates and you have to do the certain combinations and the right ones. Sounds awesome and everything, but you want to give the player some pre-exposure to a pressure plate. So maybe you just have like a
Okay.
single pressure plate that affects one object, and that's just an introduction to the pressure plate. So when they get here, they've seen it before, and now they can start to solve the puzzle without you holding their hand the whole time.
Okay.
Same thing goes for like the security camera. Really cool setup and idea, but maybe you want to introduce that somewhere else in the levels, just so you have an opportunity to reuse some of these mechanics. You don't want to have too many opportunities where you introduce a mechanic, you use it, and now you never see it again. Because this is all stuff you're going to have
Right.
have to actually produce yourself and implement. So you want to make sure that you're getting the biggest bang for your buck.
Okay. So maybe have like a camera in the first area that activates the turrets. You don't have to, block it in that area, but it introduces the idea that the camera
Yeah, it just
activates
makes
the
that
turrets.
connection to the player. This camera affects these turrets. You don't have to take it out, but later, you will to actually progress. That's a really good example of IPM, right? So you're introducing the
Hmm.
the the cameras, um, but they're not essential to the player's progression. But now later on down here, this is like more practice and mastery, where like you have to do this in order to progress. Like in some platformers,
Right.
like you have to do the double jump to get across this gap. You just cannot do it without it. So there may be a portion earlier on in the level where you can just double jump for fun. You don't need it, but then it gets to a point where you need it to move on. So that's the whole idea of IPM.
So one thing when I was making this map, I wasn't sure how to show increase in elevation as you're walking. So like in the area around 6, like you were saying, maybe have it to where there's a path up that goes around so they can get those collectibles, and that's how they get back.
hmm
Um, is there a preferred way to show that you can like walk up the increasing elevation? If that
Usually you
makes
can do
sense.
it through color is the best way. Let me see if I can pull up a map real quick, an example. So for this sense, you can just go ahead. So if you wanted to use different colored browns, that'd be okay. Like looking at this right here, this makes me just visually looking at it. It looks like this is a divot. So where this darker color brown is actually deeper than this. So rather than being a
Okay.
hill, this almost looks like a hole, if that makes
All
sense.
right.
Just pulling
Yeah.
up, like I just Google searched topography map, and this is what came up. It's definitely a real complicated and more than what we need. But you can see here that this is all based on elevation, right? And they have different colors. To me, as a as an artist, these colors don't necessarily make sense. It looks like there's like gray and turquoise and yellow and white and gold. Not really sure where those colors came from, but I would pick more of like a gradient, like do like all browns or all grays if you want to do like rock, whatever it's made up of. And these lines, not super necessary, but pretty much what these mean are, the closer the lines are together, the steeper it is, and the more spread out they are, the flatter the flatter the gradient. So the color is usually the best thing because that'll visually help yourself as well as other people reading the map.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions or any other comments that give you a good starting point where to go for another pass at this?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
Um,
Definitely looking.
the only thing that I,
Go ahead.
the only thing that I guess I would have left to say, do you think I have enough collectibles in there? Like, it's much more spread out than some of the other maps I've seen,
No, yeah,
like
I
the
think
example
you.
map or Zoe's map.
No, I like your layout here and definitely good pacing to it. You don't want to be, spamming collectibles and the players constantly picking them up every 10 seconds. You want there to be some type of interaction, every 10, 15 seconds, but the collectibles you want to be using as a reward. It looks like a lot of them you have here, at least for the most part, that they're hidden and off the beaten path. But don't be afraid to, like I said here, like this is a good opportunity to where you put like some type of one-way door here, so they can't. Once they get over here, they're back over. But like these collectibles themselves would almost serve as a reward for completing this area, right? So you can just put them in a way where it's like
Okay.
now you're on your walk back. There's some type of setup, or they're right there for you. So just a mixture of having them hidden and also be like a little carrot that you're dangling for the player and you're teasing them with it, as well as with a few, on the path that are directly tied to some of the major setups is okay. But no, I like your layout and your spacing of them. They don't seem too on top of each other or too spread out, so it looks good.
All right. Thank you.
No problem.